morning. So excited to be here with all of you today to share a surprisingly simple idea, one that has the power to transform not just your team, but ultimately the lives of those you serve. And to kick this one off today, I want to take you back to an experience I had this past winter. It's another freezing day in New York City. It's 7 a.m. I peek outside the windows. It's dark. It's gray. The kind of day that begs for sleeping in. Hot coffee, binge watching yet another episode of the Great British Bake Off with my wife to avoid having to face that cold weather. I start to question every life decision I've ever made, including why I'm putting on my shoes to even head outside. But I make it to the corner, phone in hand, and for a split second, I think about skipping my workout. There's a gym right across the street. It's closer, and I barely even have to walk to get there. But that day, I didn't go to the closer gym. Instead, I trudged 15 blocks, 3 avenues, past a dozen other fitness studios, a boutique yoga spot, my favorite donut shop, which sometimes completely throws me off, and I kid you not, even a warm, toasty sauna at the local Equinox calling my name. Here I am going to the same gym yet again. It's a cardio boxing gym, and recently I found myself going here multiple times a week, every week. And it got me thinking, what is it about this place that has me being so committed? What is it about this place that has me being so loyal? The location, inconvenient. The class times, borderline impossible. And to make matters worse, this boutique charges a fat fee. But the second I walk in, there he is. Chris, the trainer, grinning ear to ear. Danny, you made it back. I can't wait to work out with you today. He gives me a high five, and just like that, I wasn't just another guy in a crowded city. I was someone he noticed. The class starts, and it's chaos in the best way. Music blaring, people punching, sweat dripping. About halfway through, just as my legs start slowing down, there's Chris. He jumps off his stage, and he runs up to me, and he says, Danny, don't you dare stop. You've got more in you. Let's go. Keep going. You've got this. The class ends, and I'm wiped, but in the best way possible. My shirt clings to me like a second skin, and before anyone can leave, Chris runs back to the front of the room where he gives every single person a high five goodbye and says, great job today. You crushed it. I appreciate you coming in, and I can't wait to see you soon. And every time I leave Chris's class, I leave with the biggest, uncontrollable, goofiest smile like this because of how Chris makes me feel seen and valued. And I'm not alone. Chris's classes is full almost every single time. I mean, think about it for a second. In a city with a gym on almost every other block, people rearrange their lives to show up for Chris. Why? Because Chris doesn't just teach a workout. He creates an experience that makes you want to show up, no matter how hard, no matter how far, no matter how inconvenient. And it's not that Chris is some magical unicorn or heck, even the best trainer in New York City. It's because of how Chris chooses to show up for every single person who walks through that door. Now you're probably thinking, how do we hire this Chris guy? Because we need more employees like that. No matter the industry, our customers, our clients, the marketplace, our employees demand an incredible workplace culture. But building an incredible culture where our people can come and do their best work, where they can grow and thrive, has never been more complex, and it's never been more vital. I mean, so much has changed so rapidly over the last several years. Retirements are increasing, technology is changing, AI is here to stay, remote and hybrid work are the new norm. There are 5 generations in the workforce with completely different goals. We're being asked to do more with less to produce ever-increasing results, and we're expected to help our team become the winner of some Great Place to Work award. Like, sheesh. No wonder we hear so much about burnout. You know, there was a time not so long ago when leading felt simpler. You hired the right people, offered competitive pay, provided basic benefits, people showed up, they did their job, and they went home. They weren't looking for hybrid schedules or purpose-driven work environments. But fast forward to today, and that world feels like such a distant memory. The old playbook isn't working, loyalty has to be earned, and teams are burning out, disengaging, and leaving faster than we can keep up. The world of work has changed. And the question is no longer where do we find our next Chris? It's how do we create a workplace where Chris-level talent chooses to stay and thrive? So when it comes to building this incredible workplace culture, we look around as leaders and we think, well, we do so much for our people already. They get good salaries, great benefits, unlimited coffee, kombucha on tap. I mean, what says we care about our people like perfectly good gut health? And oh my, the perks parade, pizza parties, happy hours, pet insurance, and the holy grail of the modern workplace, career development workshops. But if we're being honest, our people are still disengaged. And while those perks used to be effective, today that's the ante to play the game. Today that's the ante to recruit top talent. But how do we engage and retain that top talent that we've worked so hard to recruit? When I think about what really matters in the workplace, what people truly need, I always go back to my dad. My dad was an industrial designer. He worked at early on in his career, he decided to start his own design agency. He designed tables, lockers, chairs, beautiful stuff. And back then, he had to sketch everything out by hand. It was truly art. Things were going well in his business, it's growing, and when my oldest sister was born, his largest client gave him an ultimatum. They said, join us full-time or lose the contract. Now, with a family to feed, my dad made a practical choice. He put his business to the side, and he joined this company full-time. And over the next 25 plus years, my dad gave his everything to this company, designing thousands of products, generating hundreds of millions in revenue, spending countless years overseas, opening up factory after factory. And when he hit his 25-year anniversary, as a way of saying thank you for his loyalty, his dedication, his commitment over the last 25 plus years, they decided to honor him by engraving his name in cobblestone outside the company headquarters. So he goes to work that day, they put the stone in the ground, and I'll never forget, even as a kid, being so excited to celebrate this monumental moment. A couple hours go by, my mom's cooking his favorite, turkey meatballs. My sisters and I are setting the table, the dog's wagging his tail. There was just an energy of excitement in the room that night. I see my dad's car pull up through the window, and I sprint to the front door. I give my dad this big bear hug, and I say, Dad, tell me everything. What was it like? How did it feel? Did you feel like a Hollywood star with your name engraved in stone? We sit down at the table. My dad puts some turkey meatballs on his plate, and I'm sitting there eagerly waiting for him to tell me something, what it felt like, how proud he must have been. And finally, he looks me square in the eyes and he says, Danny, I want you to know that this stone is not an honor. It's a reminder that people have been walking all over me for 25 plus years. It stuck with me. Not just his words, but the look in his eyes. He gave so much to that company, but in the end, he felt like just another name on a stone. And that moment shaped how my dad wanted me to walk through the world. A couple of years go by, I'm sitting in the backyard with my dad. We're talking about work and life, and I turn to my dad and say, Dad, I want to be like you, a designer. How do I build something great in life? He thought for a second. He said, find what you love and you'll build something amazing. Now, at that time, I loved boxing. I was training for my first amateur boxing fight, working at the local boxing gym. So I turned to my dad and said, Dad, let's sell boxing gloves. Now, most parents would have probably laughed it off or patted their 14-year-old son on the head, but not my dad. He believed in it, in me, and said, let's do it. So a couple days go by, sketch a logo on the back of a napkin, draft a business plan. ChatGPT would have been nice to have you then. My dad helps me find the factory overseas, and 14-year-old me was officially in business. And over the next several years, I'd go on to live my wildest childhood dreams, traveling all over the country, selling thousands of boxing gloves to UFC fighters, world champion boxers, Joe Rogan, and more. But more than the success in the business, the real legacy wasn't the business at all. It was the lessons I learned along the way from my dad. That when people feel cared for, they can achieve the unimaginable. I'd go on to exit that company, and I'd launch a consumer product manufacturing company based in Hong Kong. So here I am, early 20s, leading a remote, multi-generational global team. And it was clear if we were going to succeed in this business, this cutthroat market, razor-thin margins, I needed to do things differently. And I thought, what if I gave my people the same level of care that my dad gave me? What if I took the time to make them feel safe, valued, understood, and cared for? And that's exactly what I did. Within 18 months, we built the business to 7 figures, working with brands like Traeger, Peloton, Gravity Blankets, Birchbox, and many more. And over the near decade of building this business, I came to understand that care wasn't a soft skill. It's not some value we slap on the wall or some slogan we preach about in our workplace. It's the strategy. A strategy that, when done well, transformed not just my team, but the lives of those I served. I'd go on to exit that company, and I'd spend the next several years studying, researching, reflecting. What makes great leaders great? And what makes great teams thrive? And after looking at every single metric, the single greatest factor for building a thriving workplace culture today isn't about job salary. It's not about career growth and opportunity. But it comes down to whether or not people feel cared for by their direct leader and the people around them. It's as simple as that. I've distilled down my learning, and today I'm going to share 3 simple, actionable, research-backed pillars to help all of you make care a force in your leadership practice. And here's my promise to every single person in this room. When you develop the skill set to understand how to care for your people in the role and beyond, you will become one of the most remarkable leaders and transform not just your team, but the lives of those you serve. So let's jump in. And before I do, at the end of this, you'll be able to, I have like the slides, you'll be able to scan some downloadables as well. So just like sit back, relax, and enjoy the journey. So let's jump into the first pillar, safety first. One leader who caught my attention, who's built an incredible workplace culture, is Nate Randall. Nate is the CEO of Gab Wireless, a 200-plus person tech company building safe tech for kids. They sell smartphones and watches without any internet. And Nate strongly believes that the best cultures are built on this idea of safety first. And while Nate can't predict the future, and he can't guarantee they'll never have layoffs at Gab, he makes some big promises to his people. He promises them that layoffs will be the absolute last resort. They'll cut everything else, including their senior leadership salaries, before they'll cut their people. But safety to Nate isn't just about layoffs. He wants his people to know that at Gab, they can come and do their best work, grow, get a consistent paycheck, and show up as their authentic self. And they're doing something right, because in the 6 years of building Gab, they've never had a layoff. Their turnover is less than 2%, whereas industry standard is nearly 18%. The culture at Gab is so good that when people arrive, they tend to never leave. So what's their secret? Safety first. Safety is the most foundational building block of all great culture. You can pay your people well, you can shower them with praise, but if your people don't feel safe, they'll never do their best work. What I mean by safety is they want to know they're in a safe environment, where they're safe to make mistakes, where they're safe to speak up, where they're safe to challenge the status quo, but also safe in their job. In fact, when people feel safe at work, they are 76% more engaged than those who are not. But building a safe culture, it's hard. According to Gallup, only 1 in 4 employees say they feel safe at work. That means if we look around this room right now, 3 out of 4 of you are holding something back. An innovative idea, the next big breakthrough, or perhaps just simply a better way to do something. I'll never forget one of my first jobs out of college. I'm working at a small startup. We sold a sleep supplement. And the business was growing pretty fast, a little bit ahead of its time, though. And every quarter, we'd cram into this tiny conference room to review the quarterly numbers. We'd order pizza, baked chicken wings, the personal highlight for me. And like clockwork, within 3 hours of starting this meeting, someone would storm out of the room in tears. Not because the numbers were bad, not because the baked wings were heavenly, because they always were, but because the CEO would snap. He'd yell across the table, pick someone apart in front of everyone, and the rest of us, we just sit there silent, eyes down, hoping it wouldn't be our turn next. And the irony? In the absence of safety, we build a culture of fear. A culture where people fear speaking up and feel their voice does not matter. A culture where people fear making mistakes and fear taking initiative. A culture where people ultimately feel undervalued, underappreciated, and disengaged. And the dangerous part, it doesn't take many moments to shift the culture. Just once, we let a disrespectful comment slide. You ignore the voice that keeps getting talked over. You stay silent when someone's shut down for raising a concern. In that silence, culture gets defined. And suddenly you don't have the culture you built, you have the one you allowed. Now, I'm sure some of you are sitting here thinking, I can't control over making my people feel safe. I can't control if there are layoffs or if people get let go. Heck, I'm scared in my own role. And I hear you, I really do. But what within your power can you do to make your people feel safe? Maybe you're right, maybe you can't control the macro. But every single person in this room controls the micro. You control whether a coworker's mistake becomes a moment of shame or a moment of growth. You control whether a coworker chooses to stay silent or feels safe to speak up. And every single person in this room controls what you choose to tolerate. Even if that means challenging a coworker, a leader, or simply just the way things are. Because what you tolerate becomes your culture. Not the values on the wall, not the company policy, not what's said at the all hands. You may not be the CEO, but if you're in this room, you shape building a culture of safety for your people, moment by moment. Pillar number 2, deeply understand. So, I was in my early 20s building my manufacturing company. My business is starting to grow. We just opened up an office in Hong Kong. We hired our first employee. Her name was Circle. And for the first 6 months or so, Circle and I, we never met. We just connect over good old-fashioned phone calls. I mean, this was before the times of Zoom and Google Meet. And on my first trip over to China to finally meet Circle, I wanted to be hyper-intentional about making the most of our limited time together. You see, I didn't want to just visit factory partners and take care of business as usual, but I thought, what if I bring Circle with me so I can get to know her better? And I didn't realize it then, but this one simple decision would be the rocket fuel to take my business to the next level. And on the flight over, I'm thinking, how do I make sure that by the end of this trip, I deeply understand who Circle is? That by the end of this trip, I understand Circle's motivations for wanting to help build my company. And most importantly, that I understand what's most important to Circle. 16 hours later, I land in China and we're off to the races. We go to our first factory visit. We have the most incredible meeting. And at the end, I tell Circle I want to go and eat the local style food. I thought, what an incredible way to understand who she is and what's most important to her. So we sit down at this local spot. Circle orders the food. I'm sitting there. I'm tired. I'm hungry, jet lagged, but excited. I'm thinking dumplings for breakfast. I mean, this is my first meal in China, and I'm like, I tell Circle, baby back ribs, sesame chicken, pork fried rice, mushu, bring on all the good stuff. I wanted a full-blown feast. A couple minutes later, in the waiter walks. He puts this plate down on the table, and I'm looking at it, trying to figure out what it is, and I have no idea. I pick it up, I smell it. Smells like food. And I turn to Circle and say, Circle, what is it? She says, local style. I said, yeah, but Circle, what is it? She says, duck head. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever eaten a duck's head before, assuming not by the noise. But it's not exactly protein rich. You hold it by the beak. That's what the aluminum foil is for. And you kind of like munch the little bit of meat that's on it. And I asked Circle, I said, Circle, do you like eating this? She said it's so-so. And I said, okay, if I'm willing to try it, are you? She laughed. She said, of course. And we spent that afternoon eating duck's head, connecting and getting to know one another more. And that was the entree, by the way. But she did order me the biggest bowl of fried rice, which was delicious. And of course, it's not about the duck head, but it was about the moment that said, I want to understand who you are. And I didn't sit there grilling Circle with questions. I simply went first and just started sharing what I was building, what I was excited about, even what I was nervous about. And that created space for Circle to follow. And for the remainder of that trip, whenever we sat down for a meal, we'd order the local style food and we'd talk about life outside of work, our cultures, our traditions, our hobbies, our families, our passions. But it didn't stop there. Those conversations opened the door to life inside work as well. Circle began to open up about her skill set, the strengths she wanted to put to work, the skills she wanted to develop, the relationships she wanted to nurture. And fortunately for all of you, you probably don't have to go and eat a duck's head to start to understand your people. But understand this, the more deeply you understand your people, the more committed they'll be. In my 8 years of building the business, Circle was by far my most loyal employee. She'd come in on weekends not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Over the years, she was responsible for millions in sales and growth, and she'd often share with colleagues and coworkers how being understood made a material difference in how she showed up. When I finally left my business, Circle pulled me aside because she wanted me to know that if I ever open up a new business, to let her know as she come and join in a heartbeat. When our employees feel understood, not surface level, but deeply understood for who they are, who they're aspiring to become, we unlock their very best. But here's the thing. Understanding our people is one of the most misunderstood things in the workplace. It really is. We think we understand each other because we say hi, we know everyone by name and a few nice things about one another. And no doubt those things are good. And they are important. If you're doing those things, you are steps ahead of the rest. But in order to truly understand our people, we need to go deeper than the surface. Now, I'm sure some of you are sitting here thinking, Danny, deeper than the surface, I know my people. I mean, we've worked together for years. We've been on big projects together. We even grab lunch. And that may be true, but do you really know them? I mean, think about it for a second. How many of you can honestly answer these questions about your coworkers? And you don't need to say it out loud, but just seriously think about it. Like, do you know your coworkers' strengths, their weaknesses, the projects that light them up, their passions, their hobbies, inside and outside of work, their kid's name, their partner's name, their 1 year, their 3 year, their 5 year goals? Or do you just kind of know them? Because knowing someone's name is one thing, but understanding who they are, that's everything. And the challenge isn't that we don't want to understand each other and our coworkers. Of course we do, but we're just too surface level. And when our understanding of one another is surface level, assumptions naturally creep in. And assumptions aren't just a leadership problem, it's all of us. We all make assumptions all the time, and it's one of the most dangerous things we could do. And you probably hear it. I hear it all the time now. Like millennials, privileged generation. Gen Z, they don't want to work hard. They don't work hard like me when I was coming up. And I want to put this to bed once and for all as a millennial. Not only did I want to work hard on my business, but I also had passions and interests and things that lit me up outside of work that weren't important, just as every single person in this room has. And by the way, every single person on your team has. I was about 5 years into building my business when I decided to start something completely unrelated to work, a podcast. I know, like everyone and their mom. And, while my podcast had nothing to do with my business, I loved it. After hours, I'd flip on the mic and I'd interview incredible people about living an intentional life. A few months in, I hit a milestone, 25 episodes. And that same night, my phone rang. It was my business partner calling me from Hong Kong. We went through the usual work updates, and just as I'm about to hang up the phone, he says, "Hey, I want to talk to you about something." And here I am, I'm thinking he's going to congratulate me on 25 episodes, maybe even ask when he can come on the show to share his wisdom. And he said, this project of yours must take a lot of time and energy. Every hour should be spent on the business, not this little interview show of yours. I sat there, phone in hand, frozen. Because to me, the podcast wasn't a distraction. It was fuel. It gave me something that work simply couldn't. And I loved every second of it. But from that day forward, I never talked about it again at work. Never shared a lesson with a coworker, and I tiptoed as I kept recording this very thing that brought me to life. Fast forward almost 2 years, I'm at dinner with my business partner and his friend, stranger, never met him before. And we sit down, and before the appetizers even hit the table, his friend turns to me and he says, I see you've got a podcast. What's it about? And in that moment, my stomach drops because my business partner is sitting right there directly in front of me. And I knew this is the last thing he wants to hear about. So I tell his friend just enough to move the spotlight off me, but inside I wanted to tell this guy everything. My favorite episode, my favorite lesson, the most surprising thing I learned from recording 150 episodes. And before I could even continue, my business partner chimes in and he says, the little interview show of yours? I gotta be honest, never listened. In that moment, I was gutted. Because sitting right there on my right was a stranger, someone I just met, asking me more questions about it than my business partner ever had. And sitting right there directly in front of me was someone who said they cared deeply about me, yet never took the time to understand me beyond the role. Instead, he assumed that if it didn't move the bottom line, it didn't matter. Assumed that his priorities should be my priorities. Assumed that if it took time away from work, it was a distraction. Assumptions are one of the most dangerous things we could do as leaders. And when we choose assumption over understanding, we send the signal that we don't care about the person sitting right there directly in front of us. What's the podcast in your people's life? The thing that lights them up. Maybe it's not a podcast at all. Maybe it's family, their kids, training for a marathon, travel. What about inside work? What are the projects that ignite their soul? The skills they want to develop, their goals, their aspirations for 1 year, 3 year, 5 years. If we don't know, it's time we start asking better questions, deeper questions, and that we leave our assumptions at the door and we seek to deeply understand our people in the role and beyond. Because when we do, we'll unlock a version of them that no paycheck, no salary, no perk can ever unlock. Pillar number 3, constantly connect. Most people connect when a big moment forces it. A promotion, a crisis, a resignation. But real connection can't be something you do here and there. It has to become a habit. Because our people are constantly changing. And with those changes, their relationship with work is going to change. But by constantly connecting and understanding what our people want, what they need, we can tailor and personalize how we lead to best serve them. There are 2 major forces that are going to shape all our relationship with work. The first, seasons of life, and the second, big life events. First, let's tackle seasons of life. What I mean by seasons of life is 21-year-old Danny can't possibly be the same as 32-year-old Danny. And 32-year-old Danny can't possibly be the same as 55-year-old Danny. Think about it. 21-year-old Danny, fresh out of college. He's young, he's hungry, he's committed, he's willing to work day and night if that means getting ahead. A leader who is connected and understands 21-year-old Danny will tailor and personalize how they lead to give him learning, development, advancement, career growth, opportunity. That's how you engage and retain 21-year-old Danny. Now, 32-year-old Danny is going to look a little bit different. For one, he's married. He has a 10-month-old, a beautiful, fun, playful golden retriever. You could tell I'm a dog person. He might want to recalibrate his relationship between work and life. He might be more comfortably situated in his career. A leader who is connected and understands 32-year-old Danny will tailor and personalize how they lead to give him freedom, flexibility, autonomy, support. That's how you engage and retain 32-year-old Danny. Now, 55-year-old Danny is going to look a little bit different. For one, every AI bot is convinced I'm going to grow a full head of hair, which is exciting. And by the way, I know I'm in a room full of healthcare professionals. I don't know if I'm supposed to do this, but I uploaded my blood work to ChatGPT. So, I'm convinced, I hear the guess. I know I'm not supposed to do it, but I am convinced that maybe it knows something that we don't know, and hair is coming on my head in the future. But someone come find me after and tell me how to get that data off there. But I'm doomed, I know. But in all seriousness, 55-year-old Danny is going to be very different. I might want to take my decades of experience and do my best work yet, maybe. I might want to mentor someone who's younger than him, work on a legacy project. Maybe I want to check in, check out, maximize time with my family. A leader who is connected and understands 55-year-old Danny will tailor and personalize how they lead to give him exactly what he needs in that season of his life. Look, people changing through the seasons of life is a given. But what that change looks like is going to be different for everyone. You might have someone in their two people in their 20s, one who's chasing the corner office, and one who can't wait to check out on Friday at 2 p.m. to hit happy hour. You might have someone in their 30s and someone in their 50s with similar goals, or maybe they couldn't look more different. And that's why the conversation around generational differences and the generational divide, and Gen Z wants this, millennials want that, boomers operate this way, it's the wrong conversation to be having. It's not about whole entire generations. It's about the individual sitting right there in front of us and understanding what that individual wants and needs to do their best work. And not just in their role, but in their life. And we do that by constantly connecting and understanding their needs first. In addition to seasons of life, big life events are going to change your people and change their relationship with work and in a big way. And what I mean by big life events are the moments that are the highest of highs, like getting married or starting a family, and the lowest of lows, like going through a nasty divorce or losing a loved one. And unlike seasons of life, big life events can happen anytime, at any moment, and can completely change the course of your employee's life and your life. And for me, when I think about big life events, I can't help but think about my mom. I was in my mid-20s building my manufacturing company, and at this point, my business was booming. I felt like I was on top of the world. We just landed our first 7-figure contract, and I was excited to tell my mom the news. I went away for a week-long trip to celebrate, and when I got home that night, I decided to go over to my mom's place the next morning to share this big win with her. So I go over her place. It's 6:30 in the morning. My mom's still sleeping. I make myself some coffee. I take out my computer. I call my business partner up in Hong Kong, and I start plugging away on the day. About 2 hours go by. It's 9:30. And I look at my watch and I'm thinking, a bit odd, my mom's still sleeping, but I don't make much of it. And I'm right back to the keyboard. And finally, about 30 minutes later, my mom walks in the room. She's wearing a green sweater and gray sweats, and she sits down on the couch next to me and she says, "I need to talk to you about something." And I said, "Mom, it's so great to see you. I got something I got to share about work myself. But before I tell you, do you think I could just finish this one last email?" And I'm right back to the keyboard, typing away. And then my mom takes her hand, she closes my laptop, and she says, "I need to talk to you now." And at this point, I'm thinking, did I do something? Am I in trouble? I'm in my mid-20s. There's no way I'm in trouble. I could have sworn that morning when I came home, I closed the toilet seat. And then my mom grabbed my hands and she says, I have cancer. Couldn't even believe the words that just came out of her mouth. Only 5 years earlier, my dad had passed away from cancer. And I knew a difficult road was ahead. About 2 days later, my mom checked into the hospital, but despite the news, something beautiful happened. For the next 2 months, as my mom was in the hospital, she'd share these bits of gold with me. Bits of gold that would change the trajectory of my life forever. She'd say things like, "Life's hard. It's not fair. And life is glorious. So find your glory." She'd say, "It's okay to not be okay today. but don't let this moment define you. Let it guide you. And she'd say, you have to decide the life you want to live, no matter what punches life throws your way. In those 2 months, so much happened so quickly. I watched my mom suffer as she got weaker and weaker. When the doctors told us that my mom didn't have much time left, we scrambled to make her last wish come true, to see my oldest sister get married. Less than 24 hours later, my mom's closest friends poured into the hospital. They did my mom's makeup and made her look absolutely beautiful. I watched my sister bravely march through that hospital hallway as she chose to marry the love of her life despite her circumstances. I watched my mom sing and dance from her hospital bed as she cherished every last second of life. My mom would spend her last days dying showing me how to keep on living. And after only 2 months in the hospital, my mom passed away. And my life would never be the same. You couldn't possibly expect someone who went through that, who lived through that, who witnessed that, who experienced that day after day for 2 months straight, to possibly, even remotely, return to work only 2 weeks later and be the same person. After my mom passed away, my relationship with work completely changed. And it's not that I stopped caring about my work or my business because I didn't. But I also began to care about so many other things in addition to my work. My business partner at the time, he didn't understand how to support me through that. And while his intentions were good, he'd say things like, you know, Danny, at least you have your business to focus on. But I didn't want my business. I wanted my mom. Look, it's inevitable that your people are going to change. Whether it be seasons of life or big life events or work change, we're all constantly changing. And your job as a leader isn't to expect your people to stay the same. It's to recognize that they won't. And when we show up to work every single day, when our people show up to work, to remember, we're all carrying a whole world with us on our shoulders. We're welcoming little ones. We're caring for aging parents for patients. We're experiencing our own high highs and our own low lows. But by constantly connecting and understanding what our people want, what they need, we can tailor and personalize how we lead to best serve them, and not just in their role, but in their life. And that's our job as leaders. So, how do we do this? How do we do it in a way that actually moves the needle forward in our organization and within our teams? How do we constantly connect? Now, I must warn every single person in this room, it's actually incredibly simple, but it does require a little bit of time and intentionality on all your parts. In your leadership practice, I want to invite all of you to make space and time for what I call connection time. Now, I want to be really clear what this is not, because so often we miss the mark a little bit. Now, connection time, it's not about having an agenda. It's not about checking in on a project or having an impromptu one-on-one. The goal of connection time is to connect on a human-to-human level. It's to deeply connect with one another. And regardless of how your organization looks, remote, hybrid, in person, I want to just share a glimpse of what this could look like in your organization within your team. So, if you are fully remote, we have to get a little bit more creative. One client I recently connected with, they're fully remote. They think it's the best way to attract talent, but they understand connection time is important. So every 8 weeks, they rent out a hotel room like this, and they pop up a makeshift office. They set up desks, and they're not there for a training. It's not an offsite. They are there to work. And I love, someone brought their dog, which I think is just hilarious and something I would totally do. Now, if you're a hybrid, and I'm sure, by the way, there's probably some crazy dog people in here who do the same. If you're hybrid, don't just come to the office the days you're there and do the same thing you could be doing at home. This is your time to connect. So grab a coffee, schedule a team lunch, plan a happy hour, plan an activity. And if you're not the person who normally is in the planning role, don't be afraid to take the initiative. After all, culture is shaped by every single person in this room. And if you're like, not for me, ask within your organization, within your team, if someone's willing to step up. People are craving this now more than ever. And I can guarantee you someone will gladly step up and take on this role. And if you have the luxury of going to an office or a facility every single day, spend 5 minutes walking the floor. Just 5 minutes. One leader I admire who walks the floor is a guy named Billy. Billy runs a lighting company based out of New York, 300 plus employees. And after exiting my manufacturing agency, Billy, he invited me to his office. He was looking for some help with digital strategy. He thought, millennial, I know a lot about digital strategy. I know nothing about digital strategy. But I told Billy, like, sure, let's hang out. So I go to his meeting anyways. I show him what I knew, not much. And Billy's like, hey, let me give you a quick tour of the facility before you leave. And I'm like, sounds good, Billy. So we take one step out of the conference room, and the first person he sees, he stops and he says, Pam, it's great to see you. How's your son like in college? We take another step the other direction, and he sees Alan, and he's like, Alan, it's great to see you. How's your son? How was your family trip? Everything going well? And as we continue to walk the halls of Billy's warehouse, Billy stops at every single person. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, Billy, he said it was going to be a quick tour. We've been walking for 45 minutes. His office is still there. I'm starting to get a little bit annoyed, and I'm like, Billy, can we get this tour on the road? And Billy's like, sounds great. I got to show you the warehouse. It's really cool. I'm like, sounds great, Billy. Let's go. So we step into this warehouse, and I have to admit, it was pretty cool. Boxes and boxes, the lights trickle on as you walk through. Couldn't see the end when you talk. It echoed. I mean, it was a cool experience. But I'm like, Billy, where are all the people? He's like, that's the next warehouse across the street. So we walk across the street. We go into the next warehouse, and this warehouse, it is alive. People packing boxes, shrink wrapping pallets, trucks coming in and out. And as we continue to walk the halls of that warehouse, Billy stops at every single warehouse employee. He knows them by name. He knows their kid's name. He knows some things about them. And in that moment, something just hit me. You know, this may have been one of the most important lessons there is when it comes to leadership. Connection matters. It does not matter if you are the COO, a VP, a front desk assistant, or a warehouse employee. Every single person on your team wants to be seen, heard, and supported. They want to know that their voice matters, that their ideas matter, that their contribution matters, that they matter within your organization. Look, Billy, busy guy, got a lot on his plate. Yet that day, he still made the space and time to connect with every employee. If you want to build an incredible culture, take the time. Make the time. Even just 5 minutes can transform how your people feel on a daily basis. And here's the thing. When you take care of what matters most, your people, when you make them feel safe, when you make them feel understood, and when you make connection a constant, they'll take care of everything else. They'll take care of your customers, they'll take care of your patients, they'll take care of the business, and they may even go as far as to make the company mission their own. My friend Nate, who I told you about earlier, CEO of Gab Wireless, they sell smartphones, watches without any internet, awesome company. Well, one of his employees, Lori, 3 months into the job, she said, I want to make my company mission a movement. Lori was only a few months into the role when a mom from Chicago reached out and she said, I need to share something deeply personal with you. She said, my son Michael, he's 10 years old. He has stage 4 cancer, brain tumor. He's had it since he was a little kid, and whenever they go for treatment, they're away for 7 to 10 days. Away from his dad, his twin sisters, his classmates, his teammates, his neighborhood friends, he's all alone. And while he has a great relationship with his mom, after being away for a couple days, Michael gets extremely lonely. And while he's sitting there undergoing chemo and undergoing treatment, he's got his Gab watch. It's the one thing they let him have, and he's got it right there on his wrist. And while he's undergoing treatment, his dad's messaging him, his sisters are calling him, his classmates are messaging him saying, hey, Michael, we love you. We miss you. She said, your watch is not just a watch for my 10-year-old son, it's his lifeline. So Lori, extremely moved by this email, she goes and knocks on Nate, the CEO's door, and she says, hey, can I connect further with Michael and his mom, Kelly? And Nate says, have at it, do whatever you want. So she gives Michael a call, and they speak for a little bit. And on that call, she decides to invite Michael and his family out to Park City, Utah, to visit Gab's headquarters. She says, we're going to pay for the whole trip. We're going to put you up in a fancy hotel. We're going to go skiing, make snowmen. But most importantly, she was just incredibly excited to meet this young kid named Michael. And that's when Lori came up with this idea that would change not only Michael's life, but also the lives of the employees at Gab. Together, they decided to make 10-year-old Michael the CEO for the day. When Michael arrived, he and Nate had matching outfits. They really did. They wore khaki pants, black shirts, and fresh Nike Dunks. That was an important part of the outfit. Nate told Michael, he said, listen, pal, he said, there's only one rule today. He said, you legit are the CEO. So you're calling all the shots. So Michael, like any good CEO, said, let's see those sales numbers. So they had the VP sprint to his office, print out the quarterly numbers, the actual quarterly numbers, and they got together as the entire organization and they ran through the quarterly numbers. And they gave Michael a stamp that just said CEO, and they let Michael give his seal of approval on the quarterly numbers after he said, these will do. Next, Michael said, all my employees must do good and volunteer and help others. So they spent some time making goodie bags for other kids with cancer. About halfway through the day, Michael looked at his Gab watch, and he tugged Nate on the shirt and goes, psst, it's recess time. Could we take a 15-minute recess? So Nate said, of course. They hopped on scooters, they rode around the office, and they shouted, hey, everybody, we're taking a 15-minute recess. They all met back in the kitchen where they had ice cream sundaes, connected, and had a blast. Towards the end of the day, Michael looked up to Nate and said, Nate, this is the coolest thing I've ever done. At the end of the day, multiple employees said, this was the best day of my career. Not best day at Gab, not best day this week or this month, but this was the best day of my career. Other employees said, I've never cared so much about a mission at a place I worked. As leaders, isn't that what we all want? Isn't that the culture that we're trying to cultivate? What I didn't tell you is this happened during their busiest month, December, a month when they projected to sell 80,000 devices, yet went on to sell over 135,000 devices. They had every reason to not go to this length or this distance for a customer, mind you, a stranger. But this was bigger than the bottom line. And it reminded every single person why they do what they do. And by the way, you can bet that when people see Lori, a fairly new employee, coming forward with an idea, and when they see Nate, the CEO, listening to that idea and running with it and turning it into a thing, it makes people want to lean in. It makes people know that their ideas truly do matter, that their contribution truly matters, that they matter. And by the way, this had such a tremendous impact on their culture and within their organization that they decided to turn this into an annual event. And I want to just play a quick clip from this past year's CEO.
Would you come to Utah as my guest and be the CEO of Gab for a day?
Yes.
Yes!
I think a good leader is very courageous and makes sure the people they are working for are happy and they are doing their best work. I felt nervous and excited because it was my first time being a CEO. So I imagined myself doing great and making the people feel happy.
You know, in my research of studying these effective leaders, where care is a pillar in their leadership practice, I didn't just interview them, the leaders, but I also interviewed those they served. And what's so fascinating is that there was a trend amongst those they served. None of them referred to their leader, their manager, or their boss as any of those titles. In fact, they all referred to them as mentor, teacher, and sometimes even friend. Actually, one of the people who did this was my dad's first employee, Hugang. So my dad, industrial designer, worked at this large public company 25 plus years. And pretty early on in his career there, they tasked him with going overseas to interview a bunch of prospective employees. So he flies to China, he interviews a bunch of people, and he ends up hiring this young man named Hugang. And from that day forward, my dad would spend a lot of time in China, 4 months out of every single year. And whenever he'd be in China, he and Hugang were attached by the hip, pretty much like that picture. They did everything together. They traveled together, they had every meal together, they designed products together. When I say everything, I mean everything. And in their 10 plus years of working together, they built a relationship that transcended boss and employee. In Hugang's words, my dad was more than a boss. He was a mentor, a teacher, and even a friend. Unfortunately, when I was 20 years old, my dad was diagnosed with cancer, and about 7 months later, he found out that his treatment was unsuccessful, and he didn't know how much time he had left. So a couple days go by, he picks up the phone and he calls Hugang to let him know that his treatment was unsuccessful and that he'd be canceling his next trip to China. So they speak for a little bit, and Hugang is devastated. I mean, wasn't expecting this news. They were actively planning my dad's next trip to China. So they hang up that night, and later that evening, Hugang, a regular employee, was on the next flight out. A flight from Shanghai to New York City. 16 hours later, he landed in New York and got right in a taxi and drove straight to the hospital. He wanted to see my dad one more time to say thank you, to express his gratitude for having the chance to work together, to learn together, to grow together. When he got to the hospital that day, my dad wasn't expecting to see him in a million years. I wasn't expecting to see this guy in a million years. They spent that afternoon talking, reminiscing about the past, laughing as they shared some of their favorite memories, and crying as they said their final goodbyes. Hugang got back in a taxi, left the hospital, and was on the next flight out back home that same day to Shanghai. He didn't do this because he had any business incentive, no motive to get ahead. In fact, no one from work even knew that he made this trip. He paid out of his own pocket. He took his time away from his own family. He did this because he felt he needed to say goodbye, because he cared so deeply for his mentor, his teacher, and his friend. And my dad cared so deeply for him. Shortly after my dad passed away, Hugang left the company because he felt his biggest support was gone. And look, without a doubt, my dad was his boss, but he was also so much more. And my invitation to every single person in this room is to go beyond your given role, to be more for your people, because you can. Remember that stone they gave my dad? It wasn't legacy. It was a reminder, a warning of what happens when care is assumed but never truly felt. We're all laying stones. Moment by moment, stone by stone, day by day. In 25 years from now, when your name's brought up, what stone will your people remember? Ones that made them feel walked on, or stones that made them feel safe, understood, connected, and cared for? Thank you so much.